Alright, so enter David Harbour, the actor who plays the lovable Hop on Stranger Things and one of the first big names to actually sign on to the show, where he always believed in the project, but he didn't always believe in the name, and this is why he hated Stranger Things. Getting Stranger Things made was a really long and difficult process where a dozen networks turned it down, and the Duffer Brothers almost lost hope until Netflix picked it up, but when Netflix bought the show, it was actually called Montauk. The reason they wanted to call it Montauk was this right here, Plum Island, which is an animal disease research center right off the coast of Montauk, which has had a lot of conspiracies around it for decades. Late 2000s conspiracies blew up after this thing washed up on the shores of Montauk, and a lot of people said, oh, it's from Plum Island, but it turned out it was just actually a raccoon. The problem with filming in Montauk is it's really expensive, and I know from experience, here's me at John's Pancake House in Montauk, I go there every summer, and the median price of a home there is $2.1 million, so obviously the idea of making a TV show there gets really, really expensive. So because that's to save money, they decided to do shooting in Indiana because they did have a lot of abandoned military bases there they could use for filming, and they just thought it would also add this small town aesthetic similar to the movie E.T. Still, the issue was they couldn't call the show Montauk anymore, and the Duffer Brothers had to pick a new name, so before Stranger Things, they actually picked the name Indigo. The reason is because in a lot of sci-fi stories, children who are experiments from the government aren't identified by numbers, but they're actually identified through colors. So Millie Bobby Brown's character wasn't supposed to be called 11, she was supposed to be called Indigo. The reason why indigo was going to be the color for Millie Bobby Brown was it was supposed to be a symbol on the indigo children, which was this pseudoscience idea in the 70s and 80s that there were kids living among us that had psychic powers that weren't realized yet. That was actually one of the big influences that Stephen King had when he was making The Shining, where Danny was supposed to basically be an indigo child. That idea was there for a moment, but the problem was the Duffer Brothers didn't feel there was an energy to it, Netflix didn't, and David Harbour did it, so they went back to the drawing board saying, nobody's going to like the name Indigo, and people really can't even pronounce it in some countries. Trying to think of another name, Ross Duffer came up with the idea for Stranger Things, where he just said the name really worked because he wanted something on the nose, everyone knows it's going to be supernatural, and then also at the same time he thought it actually was this 80s vibe to it, which is really their biggest goal of what they were trying to go for, because he wanted something that felt like X-Files, Twilight Zone, and something in that vein. There were some people on the team who really hated that idea. Matt Duffer, his brother, hated that concept. And then when they told David Harbour, who is the biggest actor involved so far, he absolutely hated the idea, saying go back to the drawing board because he thought Stranger Things sounded way too silly. There were two reasons they ultimately went with Stranger Things. The first one being they just couldn't come up with anything better. Montauk didn't work, Indigo didn't work, and they really had no other better names in the process. And the second was Ross took time to actually make the font, which they all really liked. They thought the logo concept was very cool, and they just felt like the show was actually going to work with it. So basically, one of the Duffer Brothers, David Harbour, and a lot of executives were really wrong on that one. The name definitely worked and helped build its fame, and I think it did a lot better than what Montauk or Indigo would have. But with that, I'm Charles Perallo. Please subscribe to learn something.